Today we're going to be looking at this, the Perazzi MX8. It's been around since 1968 and was originally developed by Ennio Mattarelli and Daniele Perazzi for the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. It was at its inception a trap model, but this is a sporting model. It's my sporting model. It's a 32-inch over and under shotgun, for those who don't know what an MX8 is, with a detachable trigger made in Italy by Perazzi. That's probably what we should have started with as opposed to some semi-interesting history. Starting at the back, you have a stock. On a Perazzi, very little is standard. Given that most every single one is built for someone, it's not really worth talking about the dimensions or specification. This gun doesn't fit me particularly well, but the wood is very pretty. The only things we can take as sort of granted that you'll see on most every MX8, the wood finish is exceptional. The checkering is also absolutely on point. It's hand done, and hand done checkering is more special than laser checkering. Yes, it costs more money. Yes, it slows down production. Yes, there's a load of negatives to it in terms of business, but there is just something a little sharper and cooler about it. And this is done to the standard Perazzi quality, which is good. We could potentially pick tiny holes in it, but we're not going to. Before we stop on the checkering, let's check it on the forend as well. Again, to a very nice standard. Not too sharp. It may have been when it was new, but you know, she's getting old now. Is 1995 old? It probably isn't. Given that we've shot guns on the channel that are in excess of 150 years old, but 30 years old, or 30, is it 30 years old? Not quite, it's 28 years old. 28 years old is nothing. Not really. Lots of good things were born in 1995, were only just coming into their prime, so it's not old, it's just getting started. The wood on the forend matches the wood on the stock. The finish is good, it's a beaver tail. Again, you will see various forends on Perazzis. On the MX8, this is probably the most common that you'll see. At the time, the forend that we see so popular now in the high tech, I don't know if it existed, and if it did, it wasn't super popular. I like this, it's not that bad, it's really not super beavery, it's just pleasantly beavery. You can get your hand around it without it being too cramped, and it does feel great in the hand. There's a lack of palm swell in this particular gun. That said, I've seen MX8 sportings with this more open pistol grip with palm swell. Again, everything on a Perazzi is different. Every stock measurement is different. Everything's different, and as such, you can't just pick one. And I say this every time with these top-end guns. You can't shoot one and hold that entire company to account based off of that one experience, because that would be dumb, given that there are hundreds of variations. Variations in stock weight, variations in stock spec, variations in barrel weight, variations in barrel length, variations in choke at the end, variations in balance. Needless to say, there's a lot of variations. So, mass generalizations only. We're going to skip past the action. The forend comes off with a little lever. It's all blacked. Obviously, they do SE3 versions and other engraved versions of the MX8 if that you so desire. We'll take that off. And we just kind of focus on the action for a bit before moving on to the barrels. The action is black. They do a silver version. There's very limited engraving. You have a little bit of engraving around the hinge disc there of the trunnion. It's not like the most wildly executed in the world, but it's nice. Which is strange, because all of the rest of this gun is built and done to a really nice standard. The engraving does seem a little rushed. I think we can admit that's fine. And there are people who are going, hey, but let me see you do better. Well, that's not the point, is it? Can't paint a car, but I can see when there's inclusions. Perazzi MX8 down the side. On the bottom there is nothing. A slight border engraving around the trigger guard and on the outside. You know, can we be blunt? It's not great. It really isn't great. Like, if you look at this line heading around the bottom here, it's not actually like a borderline, because it sort of drops in and drops out, and that doesn't make this gun bad. And I guess in the modern world it would just be laser done and no one would care. And is it better that it's less than perfectly hand done? I don't know. I guess because it's a Perazzi. Nowadays we hold them to such high regard that you forget that once upon a time they were not the Perazzi that we know now. It was not a different brand, but it was certainly more affordable. Not again that I think it's expensive now. On the offside here, on the right hand side of the action, it says sporting, just to indicate that it is a sporting model. The trap model has a slight step up rib. That's handy given the speed with which you put cartridges through a gun in trap. Generally you'll get a bit more hazing. So having a bit more of a radiator between the two to stop the heat getting into the rib, stop it hazing, makes a lot of sense. Back to the action. What makes this action really quite good? Well, there's a lot of things. Firstly, it's very low profile. Secondly, it's quite wide. That brings a lot of the weight into the bottom of the action. Tool actions don't have quite the same center of gravity, and it changes the handling characteristics ever so slightly. That low profile does increase responsiveness. And we're talking negligible marginal gains here, but There's a lot of little factors that make a Perazzi handle like a Perazzi. The MX-8 has a detachable trigger unit, not like the MX-12 that was released in 1987. What that does mean is you have a large trigger housing here, which means the stock is ever so slightly thinner. When buying an MX-8, check the stock. People have a proclivity to buy spare stocks and clip them straight on without realizing that they do need some fitting sometimes. So if it has had a replacement stock, just slap straight on there, just double check that it's not cracked, because some people will do silly things sometimes. So that's worth mentioning. As you can see, it's very, very wide. If you look at an MX-12, it's significantly lesser. You can also see that it's a separate trigger unit inside there as opposed to a standard one. To remove the trigger unit, safety catch forward, and then push it all the way forward again, all the way forward again. And this is going to be harder to do for camera than it is when there's no cameras about. There you go. Simple as that. Put it back in, you have a little groove on the front there, that slides under there. Push forward. There we go. There we go. Somebody just oiled this gun yesterday, which is very kind of them to clean it for me, Michael. However, that requires a little bit more effort than I was expecting it to take. If we take the trigger unit out and actually just have a look at it, you can see that it is powered by V-springs. V-springs versus coil springs is an argument that people like to have. I don't. I think I've had it in the past. V-springs definitely have some benefit in that you end up with a slightly faster lock time, a slightly cleaner brake maybe because of the consistent pressure. There's a lot of reasons people say V-springs are better or worse. You can buy replacement trigger units, you can buy upgraded trigger units, you can get worked on customized trigger units, you can get engraved trigger units, you can get whatever you want. You can get trigger units with adjustable triggers in, you can get silver, black and gold triggers. It is a nicely machined thing, that is for sure. And if you like looking at the internals of your gun without taking the stock off, then this could be one for you. On a sensible and serious note, it does add some mid-weight to the gun, which is preferable for many of us, right? Certainly if you're going to be starting adding big stocks and big barrels on. This gun weighs in with 32-inch barrels at 8.7 pounds. The trap guns with the raised rib and the slightly heavier sets of stuff, you're looking at near on 9 pounds, just over 9 pounds some of the time. That's quite heavy. But again, each their own. What is a 9-pound gun for sporting clays? Nothing, really. But I'm big. We're all different. What is interesting about this, even though it weighs 8.7 pounds, I think it might actually be 8.8 pounds, it doesn't matter. It still handles like it's 7.5 pounds, and that's because Perazzis are quite special. As we've discussed, the action is wide and shallow. That keeps the center of gravity low. The trigger unit is detachable, keeps the weight between the hands. All of the design, the heavy monoblock at the back of the barrels, allows you to maneuver this gun around its central axis very, 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 very fast, as you'll see in a second when we go and shoot it. Before we do that, let's look at the barrels, because Perazzi barrels are interesting and the source of some debate. The barrels lock up on this Boss-style action. Those two lumps at the back drop into the back of the action and a bar comes over the top of them. It's nice, it's a great locking system. It swings over two trunnions. Here, it locks up on one bite, but it also draws onto the side of the action, meaning you have a lot of bearing surface, which means these guns don't wear out quite as quickly as others that don't have that amount of bearing surface. If a gun is just hung off of these two hinges, every time it goes bang, all of the pressure is put just through these two hinges and one bite. However, this, where you have a large bearing surface, it wears out less, it shares the load. That also translates into slightly smoother recoil, technically speaking. Isn't that nice? Who doesn't want less recoil? To put it together is quite simple. You aim for these hooks to go onto the inside of these hinge discs. You come relatively high but not too far back, like that. The ejectors are pre-sprung in here, there's no springs in the forend. The system is similar to others. We can go through that another time if you want. Let's talk about barrels. Barrel weight and Perazzis is an interesting one. These ones weigh in at 1610. You can get everything from 1500 up to 1700 or in that kind of ballpark. 1680 I think might be the heaviest I've seen. That makes a difference. The heavier the barrel, the more heavy the barrel. The way it handles will change, obviously. A lightweight barrel will move one way, a heavy barrel will move another way. What's also interesting is the way that the weight is distributed in the barrels can change. So 1610 doesn't just mean 1610. And that's not just a 1610 set of 32 inch will be a 1610 set of 32 inch. This is fine gun making. This is precise gun making for clients, discerning clients who want a gun made the way they like it. Try a couple if you want a second-hand one. That's all I'm gonna say. And maybe you don't have to, right? Depends on your level. If you're just getting into it, buy a gun and go and have fun. If you are more of a connoisseur, you've tried a few guns, you know what you like, try a few. Don't be buying a Perazzi off the internet without having picked it up and waved it around at least. The source of debate with Perazzis is the barrel technology and the fact that they are soft soldered rather than silver soldered. They do have some silver in the compound they solder with, but their soldering compound is melting at about 1640 Fahrenheit versus silver solder, hard solder, that melts at about 1200, 1250 Fahrenheit. That is interesting. Let's go through the pros and cons of soft soldering. The big con, obviously, and anybody who has owned a Perazzi in a hot country or put high volume rounds through one will know that the ribs can come loose. Obviously, if you think of the solder like glue that melts at a lower temperature, generally, this is a terrible analogy, it's a film of terrible analogies. The solder at a lower temperature provides a softer bond. The solder that melts at a higher temperature provides a harder bond. Ergo, when this gets hot, you're putting loads of rounds through it and those barrels are ever so slightly expanding, remember, every time you pull the trigger and then contracting. It's important to remember that that does have some knock-on effect, and eventually those ribs will pop off. I'm led to believe you can relay the ribs a dozen times. And we're not talking this is not happening every year. It may happen in hot countries every 100,000 rounds, give or take. That's a lot of rounds, so it's not going to upset many people in my head. Or maybe it will. The positives of soft soldering mean that the more you heat a barrel up in that soldering process, the higher the chances of it warping. Perazzi, being a trap company, originally pride themselves on barrel accuracy. It's so unbelievably important, the regulation when it comes to trap shooting and sporting shooting, for sure, but anything that could potentially mess with the regulation and point of impact is put to one side. And they, having spoken to them, believe that it's better to have barrels that are regulated that you need to relay occasionally than hard soldered barrels. So what's interesting about soft soldered barrels is you can actually regulate them once they are stuck together a little, if anything does happen. I'm led to believe. I'm led to believe that is the case. Hard soldered barrels you cannot. Once they're stuck together, they are stuck together. And you can undo the silver soldering process if you send your barrels to the fiery Mount Doom hell. But the chances of you doing that are fairly minimal. What that means is that when you're making hard soldered barrels, the people argue about this, right? This is gun geek stuff. This is gun manufacturers bickering stuff. Those who use soft solder on their barrels will say that hard solder, the process can warp your barrels, and once they're stuck together, if the regulation's not perfect, why will you do that? Those who silver solder their barrels, hard solder their barrels, will say, we get it right the first time and we've got enough processes in place to know that it doesn't warp. I think the bottom line is that neither are right and neither are wrong. There's just soft solder and hard solder. There's pros and there's cons. And if you're buying a gun and you really care about how it's regulated, shoot the damn thing and see whether it's regulated to a fashion that you're happy with. I never thought I'd be having this discussion on this channel because I don't care that much. Most every modern gun will be regulated to a tolerance that is good enough for me. Apart from that Bakel that we shot like 4 years ago that shot 2 foot apart. And it's only because this year has been a year of learning about barrels and barrel geekery that I'm even entertaining this whole concept. Balance point on this particular gun is bang over the hinge. In fact, I think it's about an 1/8 in front from what I remember. There you go. This gun is lightning fast and I haven't shot it in a couple of years, to be honest. But I did shoot a Perazzi when we were out in America, and it took me 50 to 75 rounds to just slow down, because you don't need to shove it like you do other guns. It is a fine tool, which I clearly forgot in the bit you're about to see. Enough of the technical and aesthetics. Let's shoot it. See if it's actually any good. See if I remember how to shoot it. We're out today filming a couple of films, and I'm probably still in American mode, so it's going to take a little while to just wiggle my way out of that. The targets are slightly different there, and it took me a couple of days to find the technique. Let's see if it's completely screwed up my English game. Or maybe not, who knows? Well, that wasn't a good start. This gun is extremely fast. I am perhaps overdoing it with targets a little bit. It's not as smooth as the last gun I shot. It's going to take a couple of shots just to warm up. I would have thought that I should have straightened this stand, but apparently that wasn't meant to be. That's better. Shoots a little high. Just need to ignore that. That's better. Interestingly, I must have just been broken by American shells because the recoil of them, I shot this 21 grams and I was disconcerted. A little bit of pressure in the shoulder, Sovereign 6.5 fibre, and we're back in the game. Just needed the recoil to wake me up. Let's go and find something a bit more tasty. Some of you may have noticed I've got new custom fit guards in. They've actually updated their digis. They've got an entirely new mechanism in there. So far, so good. Not that I expected anything less. 10% off with the code TGS10. Perazzis really are glorious by faction of mid-weight. It allows them to move a little bit faster and more responsive than a lot of other guns out there. Often when you move to one or shoot one versus other guns, it just takes a little while to, I don't know, get used to it. Hey bird. Definitely have to change that timing. Things need a little more lead. Just a little. B-bird. Off the back bank, most likely a monster looper knowing Josh. Dead. C-bird. Right in front of us. D-bird, probably right to left looper. Oh yeah, you do just have to let these guns fly. 1610, that's not a lightweight barrel at all. But it just handles like something sort of 50 grams lighter. And it's fixed choke as well, so I suppose that counts for something, but yeah. How can you not love a gun that handles that responsively? They really are epic. Just not for everyone, right? Not everyone likes a gun that is this responsive. I've really struggled with this today. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, because I remember having shot it in the past and shooting it to a pretty decent standard. I guess just some days you actually want a gun that fits. Definitely the readjustment into English targets has been a bit different. All the sort of techniques that I found work for my American ones and sort of relearning a few things for over there. I'm just gonna have to probably go and spend 100 shells getting used to guns again. But that's fine. The MX-8 really is an amazing gun, and what is really interesting to me now is how low a value these guns hold. So I suggest we head back to my desk and play on Gun Trader. See, I maintain an MX-8 is about the best value gun you can buy secondhand, or it's up there. Given the price of a new one versus a price of a secondhand one, and I appreciate that with MX-8s there is so much variety in barrel weight, stock dimension, balance, handling, condition, that it's not all that easy. I thought we'd have a quick look on Gun Trader and actually find out what they are, what you can pick a good one up for. All right, search by make, Perazzi. So if we go in, we drop in mechanism, caliber, 12 bore, make, Perazzi, model. All right, make, model. Let's scroll down and have a little look what MX-8 variants are available. Here we go, MX-8. Okay, so here we have it. Perazzis, all right, we'll discount the Skeet one. Nobody wants a 27.5-inch gun, especially not a Perazzi. MX-8, no details in Oxfordshire, trade seller. All right, let's get rid of undesirable barrel lengths. Let's go into it and put in 31 inches plus, update results. Not that a 30-inch gun is undesirable, but if I was actually looking for me or recommending a sporting clays gun to anybody, 32-inch now, if you're going to take it seriously, is the way to go. A 30-inch gun can still be really useful in a lot of cases, but given how fast many MX-8s are, a 32-inch gun is not like a big issue, or I don't feel like it's a big issue. Here we go, now we're actually talking. Top option. Private seller, West Sussex, Perazzi MX-8 Sporter, £2,200. £2,200, 8-pound tooth, 32-inch, Teague choked. Manufactured 1977, so it's an older gun, but that's no issue there. Still as tight in the action as the day it was made. I put money that's not true. Teague choked, 1/4, 2 halves, 2 fulls. 15 1/8 inch stock, high pheasant gun, handles superbly for either clay or game. Any questions, please ask. Richard, Henfield, Sussex. I mean, it's a private seller, so that can be good. It's a stepped rib gun. That's interesting. That's no bad thing. I mean, I don't dislike a stepped rib gun, but that puts it way more in the trap than sporters kind of department. All right, let's move off of that. But hey, let's hang on it for a second. This is a world-class gun for £2,200. If you got that, put a Manuel Ricardo on it for 1,500. For £4,000, you've got a very capable machine. Trade seller Wiltshire MX-8 Sporter adjustable. Hey, this is it in Wadswick. All right, so you're paying quite a bit more. Obviously, we've discussed in the past that you can save a lot of money on guns by having concessions or making concessions. And the concession there is you'd save £2,000, the best part of £2,000, but you'd have to live with a stepped rib. Again, no drama here. This one, however, 15 1/4 inch stock, 32-inch barrels, 8-pound tooth, so it's not devilishly heavy. It's got an adjuster in there, so it's not going to be so bad. I would worry with the adjustable that it might be too rearward heavy. It's got kickies as well, which would indicate that. These are all little things that I would be looking for here. 2022, it was teague choked, come with a set of 5 teagues. I mean, you can't hate that at all. That's a really great option. Nice standard grip, nice wood, an adjustable comb. The MX-8 really is just great value for money. Again, perhaps not what I'd choose now, but for a long time, I really liked how they moved. It was fun. Now I prefer something a little bit heavier, a little bit more controllable in the front end, a little bit more front end weight, potentially. But those guns do exist. You just need to be looking for higher barrel weight guns. But when you're buying an MX-8, you know what you can do? You can email the seller and ask them for a barrel weight, because it's stamped on the barrels, it's a really big nothing. Also means nothing, just so you know, realistically, unless you can go and handle the gun, check the balance points, have a little feel, and preferably, I guess, shoot it. And that is the problem. As much as there's a huge amount of benefits, meaning you can buy a world-class gun for £4,000 or £2,200, as the case was for the other one, the downside is that every single one is different. There is an element to guns that are hand-finished and for the most part custom made or customized because they're shot by a high level shooter who will prefer something a little different time to time. It's worth just having a little play and trying these things out. Just because you shot one once and it was fantastic doesn't mean the next one you pick up will set your world alight. Ooh, do we like that one? No, we don't like that one. There's got to be one here that was actually great. SC3 wood upgrade, 2004 built gun. That's more like it. This is more like it. A modern gun, multi-choked, 31.5 inch from Ian Coley's 2004 T-choked. I mean, with the SC3 wood upgrade, that might mean something to you, might not. SC3 wood upgrade is prettier wood. And this one's got lovely fiddleback. Ooh, gun trader watermarks, you can't steal the images. Yeah, I don't hate that as an option, you know, that's quite nice. But where it's non-adjustable, 14.75 inch stock, that'll limit its purpose to some people. That said, a lot of people aren't that fussy on gun fit. But I think the whole purpose of going for an MX-8 is that you probably want it to fit nicely, you want it to handle the way you want it. It's at the point you're buying a gun for £4,000, which is no small amount of money. It's interesting. I genuinely was under the impression they were cheaper just looking at what some have sold for. But I guess, like with any market, those that hit the shelves for £2,500 to £3,000 don't hang around. Those at the market value, which is seemingly about £4,000, that's the stale market value. Not stale market value, that's not a nice way of putting it, but you know what I mean. That's the sort of price that they're probably worth. When you find one for cheaper, snap it up. The last thing we're gonna do, let's check out the most expensive MX-8. Woo! An MX-8 SCO, £18,000, £15,000 for a brand new SC3 Sport. That is the other end of the spectrum. For £15,000, you're getting a very good looking gun. Firstly, that's not a bad investment, but if you're spending that, you probably wanna go and get one custom built for yourself, realistically. Also just goes to show what great value the others are. If you can find one of these for $2,500, $3,000, it's such a steal that it might almost be worth having something you weren't too perfect with. Guys, that was my extensive thoughts on the MX-8. You either love them or you hate them. That said, I don't think anybody can hate on an MX-8. You either really love them or you appreciate that they're just a good gun that other people love and perhaps don't suit you quite so well. Guys, take care. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day.